Thank you, Deborah. Can everybody hear me okay? And we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's presentation, Investment and Indebtedness, has a lot of material in it. Feel free to ask questions. However, I may or may not get to all of them. If I do not, there is a slide coming up with my contact information. You can contact me or any of the other trainers, and we are more than happy to answer your questions. So let's get started. Slide 2. Here we go. Here's my contact information. Another note for you, the MAT information library documents are listed here for debt and investments. All right, you can look those up afterwards. Once you download the presentation, you'll have all these links. For this class, verify you're using at least CTAS 2020. Things I'm going to discuss today to work with CTAS 2020. It does not work with all the prior versions. If you are using a prior version, there's 1 or 2 things I'll point out, but otherwise you've got to make sure you're on CTAS 2020. The expected knowledge base for this class. Usually when we go in, it doesn't matter what you do or don't know. For investments, I am expecting you to fully understand the disbursement and receipt modules of CTAS. If you don't, or if you're brand new, it's okay to be here, but you will want to take the clerk training, your financial record. And if you look down at the bottom, you're going to see the link to that. It's another seminar web class. You can go at your own pace, but we discuss in depth how those modules work. Couple of definitions from the state to get us going. Record of investments. That's basically a record of bonds or certificates held for investment. And then the record of bond issue as well. What we're going to talk about is what records are to be kept, the procedures for keeping these records, and the recommended account numbers. If you take one thing away from this class, please make sure you use the recommended account numbers. It is imperative for your year-end financials that you are using the correct account numbers when it comes to investments and debt. So we're going to start on the investment side, mainly because that is where most townships present questions to us. So your record of investment, this information comes from the state auditor's accounting manual. They're used for control of the investment. They allow verification that the correct interest payments are being received as they are. And it also includes things like date of purchase, description, date of maturity, purchase price, interest received, when the interest was received, the date sold, and proceeds from the sale. This information is necessary for your record, whether you're doing it by hand or using a computer program. One of the nice, why is my mouse, this is not advancing, just once, there we go. In a manual investment record, I kind of show a little one off to the side. All transactions get recorded not just in the investment record, but also in the disbursements register, in the receipts register, and then in the various ledgers at the end of the year. You notice you're going to write this stuff over at least 5 times. Anytime something's bought, sold, interest is received, it has to go in the appropriate locations. One of the really nice things about CTAS is it automates this whole process. Keep in mind, this program was designed to do what the state auditor wants for our records, all right? There is a very particular reason this is designed. Sometimes we may not like it, but that doesn't matter. There's lots of stuff all of us don't like. This is going to do it the way that we need to do it to have a proper record. So, moving forward. Oh, I did see a question about the clerk link. That was back a couple of slides, and if you drop an email to the email address, we can send it out to you. Otherwise, go to the seminar web on the MAT website, and you'll see it. So let's look at the CTAS investment list. Once we go to investments, we're going to use our menu bar at the top and the investment icon. We'll notice some of the stuff that the state wants us to have. Our purchase date, there it is, right, easy to see on that first main page. Our description. Now, you'll notice that I call a lot of these sample banks. As you can tell, this is a training set of data. Date of maturity, and your sold date. Those are the basics. Now we're going to go in and look at or edit an existing investment because there's more information you remember from that list that the state wants us to keep. In order to get to that, we're going to choose the investments in the menu bar, choose the investment icon, highlight the investment you want to view or edit, and then there's two ways to get into it. You can click the edit button, or you can double click the investment you want to open and look at. So we're going to, however we get in, now we're in here, we're going to look and see more of the required information. We see the purchase price. Now in this case, we purchased using two different funds, and you'll see here that the general fund and road and bridge are both called out with the amount of purchase. We're going to talk more about that in a little while. We see the interest rate. The interest rate is put in here, and it's informational only. CTAS does not calculate interest, all right? Next, the dates the interest was received. Notice on this interest, we broke it out by general and road and bridge each time interest was received. In this case, we're saying it's an annual interest rate. We've got some non-interest deposits down here, and we can tell just because of the amount. But if you're working with the investment, you know what they are. And we also had a couple of withdrawals in the withdrawal section. All of the required accounting information can be viewed by looking at the investment list and going in under Edit the Investment to look at that screen. Now we're going to look a little bit more depth at this screen now. Here's the deposit section. One of the big questions we get is, I got interest. Do I really have to do this? Yes, you really have to put the interest in the deposit section. The general information, how do I put information here? Well, first of all, blue areas are required information. The maturity date and interest rate are not required to set up an investment, but it is strongly recommended you put those in. Your investment ID, that is something you assign. That is not something CTAS, in disbursements and receipts, it automatically goes up with one increment. That doesn't happen in investments. So that investment ID, that's a 6-character ID you choose. You choose the type, and you're going to put a description in here. The withdrawal section is for any time you're going to remove money from this investment, whether it's a savings account, a CD, whatever it is, a money market account. Anytime you pull money out, it has to show up in the withdrawal section. The accrued interest. Remember, townships are a cash basis. Since we are cash basis, you don't have to do anything with this area. If it makes you feel better to keep track of accrued interest, have fun and you can do it, but it does not mean anything in a cash basis system, all right? So in this deposit section, evidently I duplicated a slide, I'm sorry. Keep in mind, keep an eye on this current value. That current value should always match your bank statements. If it doesn't, that means something's wrong somewhere and you need to figure it out. Usually if that cash value doesn't match, most of the time it's some missing deposits. Any increases at all, I cannot emphasize this enough. Any increases in the investment value, whether it's a large amount, a small amount, have to go in the deposit section. The deposit section is the only way to increase the value of an investment. Likewise, the withdrawal section is the only way that you are going to decrease the investment value, all right? You've only got two options. It goes up or down. Here they are, ups on top, downs on the bottom. It's really nice that it did that way. So let's talk about adding interest or other funds to an existing investment. So this is going to be your money market account or your savings account or your CD, whatever it is. You're going to click the investment, edit, and then we're going to go into the deposit section. Use the appropriate scroll bar to get down. Now there's one next to the deposits. That's the one you want to scroll to get down to the end of the list, and use your tab key then on your keyboard, or you can use your mouse to click to get to the new line. In this instance, you see this date thing here. That's because I tried to get partway through an entry to show you what it looked like. You're going to add the appropriate data. In this case, I'm getting ready to add general fund, and I'm going to say this is a 2020 interest. And then keep in mind this red up here. A lot of times we get calls and say, why is my thing red? The red means something hasn't been saved. All right. So as long as you're saving things, this will turn blue. But if it's red, it means something's been entered that hasn't been saved. In this case, it can tell I started an entry. The other thing, and we've all seen these wonderful little red dots. And we get phone calls, what are these annoying little dots? I can't get rid of them. Something really, really nice happened in CTAS 2020. They're easy to get rid of now. So when you see them, just click right up here on one of these little gray areas to an entry that's already got something typed in. As soon as you do that, the little red dots disappear in CTAS 2020, and you can go ahead and save. Now, you press the save key, you can check your value at that time, you get updated successfully. If you are seeing the little red dots and they aren't going away when you click up here, all right, so I tried, it took me a while to get one to show up on a screen. So you're seeing general fund, and here's the little red dot. You're going to have to highlight right here at this button to get rid of this line if this was unintended, and you use the delete selected records right above the withdrawal word. All right, this is if you're not in CTAS 2020. Recommendation is update your CPAS, because this is a really nice thing they got rid of. If you remember, those little dots would show up in multiple places and it took forever to get rid of them. They have fixed that now, so update if you haven't. So we talked earlier about how we enter it in an investment record by hand, and you're probably thinking, well, okay, but you said we had to put it in all these other places. CTAS is going to automate that. How are we going to do that? I'm going to show you the rest of it now. So we added the interest in the investment record. Now we have to manually add the interest to the receipts. So I've got a transaction here. When we go in and look, I'm not going into depth because I expect you to know how to use this module. You can see that in the receipts register, we put it as one entry. It shows $99. And when we open up our distribution, we made 2 entries. In the investment module, we made 2 entries because we had to put some interest for the general fund and some interest for the road and bridge fund. And so as a reminder over here, see, we did 2 entries here. In the receipts, we're going to do 2 distribution lines. We only have to create 1 receipt. If you want to create 2 receipts, nothing is wrong with that. But in this case, I made 1 receipt for the total of the interest and then use the distribution to get it into the correct fund. Here it is blown up a little bigger so you can see it better. 2 entries here in the investment, 2 entries down here. The only time you use the account number is when you're entering into the receipts ledger. All right. Now we've added that interest in 2 locations, on the receipts list and in the investment module. Well, we all know we've just doubled the amount of money is what it looks like. But this is required. We are doing this in according to the state auditor's guidelines. We have to keep a good record of the investment that's in this investment module. That has to stay in order. We also have to show revenue to the township because that money actually physically came in. So to show revenue to the township, we need the receipts module. So how do we handle 2 revenue increasing transactions? Because we don't want to overstate the revenue. CTAS was designed like this on purpose. It's expecting the 2 transactions, so it automatically creates the IAD transaction. A lot of you have seen those. The IAD comes in on its own with its own number. Now, in the manual, it's called Investment Associated Deposit. I usually tend to think Investment Automatic Deposit because it automatically does it. I don't care how you think of it. The IAD goes along with receipts. The IAD shows up in the disbursement register because remember, it has to bring the value of money coming in down. So you've got an increase in the receipts. there's a corresponding decrease in disbursements. That is on purpose. You'll notice the IAD in this case, IAD 82. You're going to see that the IAD number for each deposit line. This is, one of them is general, one was the road and bridge. Do not change the IAD numbers. I cannot emphasize that enough. More often than not, when there's a problem, it's because someone decided to change the IAD number. Also, with these, don't forget to clear out the IAD transactions when you're balancing your checkbook. We're not covering balancing checkbooks today, but don't forget to get rid of them. That's another common thing that happens is we get calls and say, we've got all these IADs and we don't balance in the checkbook. Well, get the IADs cleared out, and a lot of times your checkbook will come into balance. So maintaining successful and accurate investment modules when you've got to add interest is a 4-step process. 1, add interest to your investment module. Next, add interest to the receipts module. Then you're going to clear out the IADs when you're balancing the checkbook, and never change the IAD numbers. I know you're going to hear that a lot today, but there's a reason for it. That tends to be where mistakes happen the most. Any questions on adding receipts or interest to an investment right now? Because if not, I'm going to keep going on. You can always bring up questions again later, all right? Next, we're going to talk about withdrawing money or closing out an investment. We're going to focus on the withdrawal section of the investment module. So in this case, earlier, if you remember, I showed a withdrawal of general fund and road and bridge that had happened, and we've got our current value. So to take money out, we're going to add the fund and the date and the amount that's being removed. Okay, so we do have a question that came in about, so entering it twice will not affect the money in the accounts. That is correct. If you enter once in the investment as a deposit and then again in the regular accounting module as a receipt, because of that IAD transaction, CTAS will make the adjustment so it will not affect the balance. And if that doesn't make sense, I can cover it again. I know it's very strange to get used to, but you do have to enter that interest twice, all right? Okay, so moving on, when we talked about, we've entered our withdrawal, the fund, the transaction date, and the transaction amount. Then we want to make sure that we are keeping close eye on our current value. It's really important to watch this current value. You cannot edit it in the investment directly. The only way to edit the current value is to make deposits or withdrawals. So you'll see that this decreased our value. If you remember a few screens back, it was $120,000. So the current value changes when you press on the tab key. Sometimes I've gotten calls before, they've entered the amount, the transaction amount, and somebody calls and says, but my current value isn't changing. Sometimes it is as simple as just press the tab key or click somewhere else on the screen. That way CTAS knows it's supposed to make that adjustment. Now I want you to look at this amount. Right here we've got $25,000 withdrawal from the general fund and $12,000 withdrawn from the road and bridge. The total of this is $37,000. Keep that in mind for a little bit in a couple screens. Don't forget to hit save when you withdraw money. Now we're going to open up, as before, we're going to see these this time it's IAWs. IADs show up in the deposit for the investment deposit. IAW is a withdrawal. When you withdraw from the money market, it automatically deposits it into the receipts. All right, so you don't have to do a receipt transaction for this. Or if you do a receipt transaction, that's perfectly fine. Don't touch the IAW number in this case. So when we open this up and see the IAW, this is automatically generated. All right, this description, edit it all you want. Put your receipt number in there. You can add some notes. You can change a program code. Do not change the receipt number. All right. And again, I can't emphasize that enough. That's normally what happens is somebody changes an IAD or an IAW. Okay, the investments indicated over here. This transaction, remember, is automatic. That's why I tend to think of automatic for the A. It brings in what investment it was. It brings in the correct account number. You don't have to remember. It goes under sale of investment. One thing I do like to edit, if possible, and we'll see this a little bit more later, but right here on the deposit date ID, I like to put some sort of characters there. If you were in the class on receipts, you know I like to do that because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to be adding numbers together to balance my checkbook. I like to let the computer do it. So I would usually put interest or a save interest or something like that in this blank. This account number, again, don't edit it. Leave it the way it's supposed to be. The system's designed actually to make your life easier and to get your year-end reports correct. Now, when you hover over your mouse over here, if this line is not as big as you need, you hover it over and it shows the full name. However, getting it to show for a class is a little interesting. So I hovered over and took a picture with my cell phone, and you can see sample bank savings, annual interest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was the number we assigned to it. So when you're looking at the investment, if you hover over, if you have, let's say, 4 savings accounts or 4 CDs or whatever the case is, if you hover over it on this screen, you can tell which one it is. Again, don't forget to clear out the IAW transactions when you're balancing the checkbook. Here you can see this is $37,000. I apologize, you cannot see the full value. And that's based on my computer monitor, not CTAS. My regular computer monitor I use with CTAS gives me a full picture, but this little monitor that I had doing this does not give you the full amount. If I hover over it, the full amount would have shown up. See, there's nothing here, and it says a $37,000 transaction. And if you think back, remember one of them was $25,000 and one was $12,000. It adds them together and puts 37. Over here for the receipts class, I was doing some stuff. I actually use this little character because that way, if everything's on the same day, it pulls out my different deposits because we have coded deposits to know what the money was going in for. Now we're going to talk about adding an existing investment. This is probably one that gets more people than anything. It's very important that when we talk about adding this investment, that you understand CTAS is already being used. There's no need to take money out of the checking account. This investment existed outside of CTAS, but for some reason it's never been put in, and now you want to put it into CTAS, all right? It's been existing for years, and you've just been telling the board, oh yeah, add this investment to the total of whatever you're seeing. So we're going to go to the Add Investment tab, and we're going to go through and put in our data the way that we need to. The blue numbers are required. These are not. So you assign this in ID, just as I mentioned earlier. Description, I mean, I'm using some real genius descriptions here, okay? I realize that. But it's going to be easy to see on the screen. So we're going to go ahead and add some money, the fund, the transaction date, and I put in $100,000 because I want this to be easy to see. Once we get this saved, keep in mind, CTAS, when you add to that deposit, it's expecting you're going to add a receipt, so it automatically creates an IAD. But in this particular case, this is not for every investment. This is for an investment that exists outside of CTAS that you want to bring in so that the program is accounting for it for you. An IAD is going to be created, but this is the only time this IAD is not going to be needed, all right? You need to be sure. This is one of those it depends answers. Make sure that you know what you're doing. If in doubt, call one of us trainers. We are more than happy to direct you through. I'm going to show you how to fix it on your own, but you have to watch your screens very carefully. This is a very easy adjustment to make, but it's also very easy to screw up. If you make a mistake, no worries. We can do it, bring it all back, all right? But let's just try and do it right the first time. So step 1, locate the transaction in the disbursement. Go into accounting and disbursements. Here it is. Here's this IAD 86, CD, save, MMC. Nice, easy thing to pick out. And our $100,000. You're going to select the transaction first. That means highlight it in blue. You click on the little gray box over there. Once you've done that, you're going to press the delete button down at the bottom. All right. So when you press delete, you're going to see this screen come up. You have got to look for this little X or this little check mark. What happens here is if you don't take off this check mark, it's going to try and get rid of all the investment transactions. Okay. Right now, we've just got one transaction, but we don't want to get rid of that $100,000 that we put into the investment. We just want to get rid of this one transaction because it's showing taking money away from the township, and this investment existed, CTAS existed, and we're just trying to get it in so that we can account for it properly. So you uncheck this box. Once you've unchecked that box, then it knows it will just delete the IAD. It will not delete or touch anything else. You tell it yes, and the deposit has disappeared from your screen. Okay? Make sure, again, this is only done for investments that exist outside of CTAS and you're already using CTAS, or when you first start using CTAS. So now we're going to talk about adding a new investment. And these are nice and pretty simple, but they do generate questions. So I want to make sure we cover this. Go to the Add Investment tab. Just like before, you're going to add information up here. Again, I use the same as before, so we're adding all of this. But this time, we need the money to come out of our checking account. CTAS is expecting you to remove this money. Well, that's what we're going to do. It creates an IAD transaction. This time, we want it to stay there. However, a lot of times townships are writing checks or something like that. This time, you're going to put that check number in the description and leave the IAD number alone. You want that IAD to stay related to the investment. If you transferred money, you can put the transfer information in the description. Again, leave the IAD number alone. I'm hoping everybody sees there's one thing I really want you to remember today. It's the pattern. IAD and IAW numbers need to be left as generated. Okay, any questions on investments right now? I do see somebody's got a question. What if we had a CD this year but just had to cash it out? All right, so if you had a CD, you're going, let me change my screen here just a second. If you just are cashing out a CD, come on, click in the right spot. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is, oh, I'm going the wrong way. I'm sorry, hang on. All you have to do is withdraw the money. It's probably the easiest transaction in CTAS. And evidently, I'm going the wrong way. So you just, in the withdrawal section, you're going to click in there, put in the fund that the money's going into, put in the date that you removed it, and the amount that you removed. That's going to zero out that CD. All right? Okay, so investment report. And the money automatically, when you withdraw, gets put into the receipts register. Here, let's do this. I'm going to go into here and I'm going to show you because I don't want anybody, here we go. I believe you should be seeing the CTAS screen now. All right, the fees, that's a very good question. So let's go in here and do this way. So we are going to, and I know I see a few more questions. We're going to go through these one at a time. If we go, can you see my CTAS screen? I am making sure I'm sharing the right screen here. CTAS. We're going to go to investments and investments. All right, so let's say this sample savings that's at, let's go in here. And we can see the balance is $83,559.57. In this case, what we want to do is we're going to close out this. Let's pretend I'm going to change this. Actually, I'm not. We're going to pretend this is a CD since I don't have a CD in here. We're going to say this is a CD and we want to close it out. And we're going to put the money, we're going to put part of it into the general fund. So let's get that put in here. Let's put 80,000 in there just to make my life easier. 201, 1022, 2020. Whoops. And we'll put the other 3,000, 559.57. All right. This is how much money. This is the current value of this CD. As soon as I tab over, I'm $1 off. Wonderful. And that's why you check the current value, because you can see if you made a typo. Now I've got this set to 0. We're going to save this. It's going to go into our receipts. Okay, so I'll show you that. Here it is in our receipts. What do we do? 1022 right here. You can see here's the 80,000. Here's the 3,559. But hey, there were some fees because we closed this out early. To do those, you're going to go through your claims register and add a claim just like normal. So in this case, we're going to say we paid to Sample Bank because I come up with such creative names. And we're going to call these, whoops, penalty fees for closing out the CD early. Okay. And I have no idea what that is, but we're going to say $102. Now, you don't have to put part on road and bridge and part on general unless you want. You can pay the whole thing from the general fund. For the account numbers, ideally, you have got some sort of financing fee, and I did not look through here. Ideally, we would have a bank charges. So I'm going to do this $41,940 because this is a general fee for running the government. This is what we have to pay. We don't get a choice. They're going to take that fee out. There's no way we're not going to pay it. If in the miscellaneous, the 430 areas, a lot of townships have set up something that's called bank service charges. Did I set one up here? I don't see one. So I'm going to go into 435. We're going to pretend this says bank service charges. I could go to the chart of accounts and change it, but in this case, I'm going to just assume my miscellaneous says what I need it to say, and I'm going to put in my fees of $102. All right. If that's what you're going to do. You're going to treat it like a regular transaction. Now, with this number, if you need this number to be something else, let's go ahead and approve this claim. Let's say the board says, yeah, we know we got to pay it. We're going to enter a check number. This check number can be something simple like bank fee 27. Let's say you do this a lot. Whatever your numbering system is, it does not have to be a check. It's going to set it off differently for the board. That way they're going to know that it was a bank fee. So when I post this to disbursements, let's go ahead and get this posted. Go into disbursements. 1022. Unfortunately, my screen does not make these dates bigger easily, but we can see here's the penalty for closing out the CD early. We can go in here if you want to add more notes. Had to close out early for road project. Okay, you just want to make sure the information stays. The bank fee 27, it's red. I'm going to hit save. Okay, I'm hoping that's answering your question appropriately. Okay, so for annuities, it's going to work the same way. All right. You're going to take the fees out through either the claims process. If you don't want to use the claims process, it is okay to go straight to disbursements. You just have to make sure the board is aware that you're paying those. So let's get back to this screen. Let's hope I'm doing this right. And we're on investment reporting. Okay. So with the investment reporting, you want to play with this a little bit. I'm not doing a whole lot of in-depth on what report to use. There are some options. Take some time, play with your system, print out some things, even if you just do it on your screen and look at them. See what's available for your options. Here we've got Schedule 8 investment activity. You can kind of see what this looks like here. It's got the sample bank savings. I know we just closed it out, but it was $83,000 a few minutes ago. You've got a certificate. Oh, I do have a certificate of deposit. I just didn't see it. That has a negative $1. I don't know what transaction I put in there, but it shows what's going on with those investments. Now, ideally, you see this in the investment total right here is $203,559. If this was you working on your reports and you ran this current investment report, and then you run your Schedule 1, these two numbers should match. In this case, I didn't notice it until just a few minutes before the presentation. I didn't have time to change the picture, but the investment balance on Schedule 1 and your current investments is going to match, all right? So that's one way that you can check that you're doing everything right, is to show those. But those are a couple of the reports you can use that show investments, all right? That's it for the investments. If I've missed a question, please ask me. I know there's a lot of things to remember. With the investments, it's very simple. Whether it's an annuity or a CD or a money market or a savings or whatever, you can track it with the investment module. You may need to do a couple extra transactions depending on what kind of fees and stuff are involved, but you can always track any of your investment type things with the investment module. So now I want to talk a little bit about the indebtedness module. Like earlier today, there are some disclaimers I want to make, some information that you need to know. I am covering how to track the debt, how the indebtedness module works, the type of records you may have, and reports available. I am not covering the best type of debt for a specific purpose. Your township attorney, a financial planner, bond counsel, there may be other people. Somebody other than me is going to tell you what the best type of a debt is. At the beginning of the presentation, I gave you 3 MAT documents that detail out different types of indebtedness your township may take on. That's going to give you some information. One of the things that we're going to find today with township debt is that there's a lot of names. It's just like investments. So I have this picture of hats. I've got a couple of images here I want you to see. There's a hat. There's a Panama hat, a top hat, a hard hat, a hood, a motorcycle helmet. They're all hats, but they look very different. They serve different purposes. The same thing happens with debt. In a township, CTAS has several different listings for types of debt that you can use. Short-term debt is usually 1 year or less. Other long-term debt is something that's not a bond. And then there's different bonds, there's different assessments, there's different types. One of the things to keep in mind, all of them have different purposes, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. No matter what type of debt it is, though, you need to make sure you have recorded how much was borrowed, what the interest rate was. Again, CTAS does not calculate the interest payments, the date the money was borrowed, the maturity date, the explanation of why the debt is there. Now, that may be pretty brief in CTAS because you've only got a little section you'll see in a minute, but it's important the minutes and other documentation of the township fully details why you are incurring this debt. So for an example, when I talk about there's these different names of debt in CTAS, and there's all sorts of names it could be called. What's this stuff that's coming up on your screen? What do you call it? Depending on where you grew up in the country, where you live, even within the state of Minnesota, I have found this varies. Soda, cola, Coke, pop, what do you call it? It's all this sugar fizzy drink, but they all have different names. Same thing, but different. I've gone to restaurants, and if you're in the South and you order a Coke, you may get a Pepsi or an RC, but you said Coke, but it's the same thing. The same thing happens in debt. We call them something different, but the debt module is going to track it no matter what it's called. I'm not going into the specific types of debt. There are too many variables. Just like all of you know that townships range in size from 5 people to 12,000 people. It's very difficult to say, here's a one-size-fits-all. The module is a one-size-fits-all, but even throughout the state, there are different names for the same type of debt. Most important rule tracking debt, keep your amortization schedule where you can find it. Believe it or not, when you call us as trainers and you want help, and we say, yes, we're willing to help you get your module back in order because somebody's done whatever's happened, we don't care. That's what we're here for, is to help you. One of the first things we're going to ask you if you've got a debt, do you know where the amortization schedule is? And do you know what debt it's related to? All right? It's very important you know those two things. A lot of us, if we ever have an amortization schedule, there's a little schedule that we just post on a wall somewhere or keep it somewhere where it's very easy to access. So indebtedness. When you're going to add a payment to the debt, it's really easy. There's two methods. Method one is recommended. You're going to add the claim, go through the disbursement process, and you're going to follow the rules and only add the debt reference to the principal. Method two is because you forgot about method one and you went ahead and did everything. So we're going to cover both methods. Method one, easiest, most recommended. If for some reason you make a mistake, don't worry. CTAS is a very forgiving program and we can correct what we need to correct. So you notice in here, we're entering the claim, sample debt and principal and interest. We put in the amount. This is already posted, but you'll get the gist. Here's our fund. Here's our, okay, I did this as a short-term debt. I know I called it New Town Hall. Please ignore that fund. I was doing like 5 examples and I just messed up on this screenshot. Over here, it says sample debt. When you're entering the claim, you can show what debt you're paying, all right? So let's go in. We're going to look at that screen and I will show you how to do that because this is like very nice, very simple, and it sure makes things easier. So I'm hoping I should be sharing the CTAS screen with you now. Let's make sure. Yep. So we go into claims. We're going to add a claim for our sample bank. If I could spell, it would help. And this is a principal and interest. We're going to pay $25,000. Fund 100. Now our account numbers are really important. All of the debt numbers are going to start with 47. So I've got bond principal here, and then I scrolled too far. We're saying this is a short-term debt. Bond principal, short-term debt. We're going to use object code 603. 603 is the short-term debt principal, and the amount is, let's say, $23,000. We come over here and we're going to add our debt. So this is one of our short-term debt. Let's just say paving lake area roads. All right. Doesn't matter which one we pull out. We're going to put fund 100. 47,230 is the interest on our short-term debt, and 613 is the interest on short-term debt, and that's going to be the other $2,000. We do not put the debt on the interest. Only track debt principal. Now, that's for the indebtedness module. For the claim, we have to pay both principal and interest. Nobody's going to let you pay back just the principal. We're going to hit save, and then we need to post this. So we'll go into the claims list. We're going to approve that claim, save it. We're going to enter a check number, put in that I'm verifying our dates today. Our check number 1207, save. And we're going to post it. Okay, so you know that posting brings that over. Now we put $25,000 on sample bank for principal and interest. This transaction here, 1207, 25,000, 23,000 was our principal, right? So now we go into our indebtedness module and we pick the Lakes Area Road one. And guess what? Here's our $23,000 payment that we made today. It automatically posted it for us, all right? So we don't have to remember to do it. CTAS will do that. But what happens, and this happens all the time, you go through, oh darn, let's say that you forgot to put it on when you entered the claims. So now you have a disbursement, and we're just going to look at this one. and you have a disbursement and you forgot to put the debt on here, all right? Don't worry, don't panic. You're just going to go into your indebtedness, go into your debt, and if this, let's say I'm going to pull this off and pretend that it didn't post on its own. All you have to do is go in here and add the transaction manually, okay? It's still going to do the same thing, but you've got to back up if you forgot to add it until you got to the disbursement screen. Now, the catch is once you've already posted, CTAS won't add it to this. The posting process is what tells CTAS to look to see if there was a debt associated with that claim payment, and if there is, to move that payment over there. All right? So sometimes if you forget, basically most of the time you forget to add the debt reference. If you do, you just go in and you add it to here, the same as always. All right? There's nothing any different. It's just adding the transaction. So let's get back to the right screen here. Sometimes it takes me a second to move you back to the screens. So I am hoping everybody can see a blue screen that talks about method 1 where we add the sample debt. And then we showed where it was. And method 2 required the 2 entries. I showed you how to do that already, but I want to talk about a few things. When you go into the indebtedness and the debt icon, to get into the sample debt, it's just like before. You're going to highlight what you want. You can use edit, or you can, I forgot. This does show the issue amount. Keep in mind, this is the issue. I put this arrow on here so I wouldn't forget to tell you. This shows the issue amount, not the current balance. Too many people get confused and think this should show current balance. It does not. It just shows issue and the final maturity. Keep in mind, when we go in here and we see these different transactions, this balance, just like investments, right now it's not showing the remaining balance is down to, it should be down one more. No, it shouldn't. This is showing the right remaining balance because I did hit tab and then I took the picture. I'm sorry. When you're updating your indebtedness module, make sure you're looking at this principal paid and the remaining balance. You cannot change those in the debt, and that is on purpose, all right? That is designed to do it that way. You add the payment date and the principal amount. Check that the remaining balance corresponds with your schedule. The red again means you need to save. Interest is only added to the claim or the disbursement, not the main debt. That is a big difference. Is you do not add the interest in here. It's going to mess up the balance that you still have to pay. As in other modules, the red indicates, and you have to hit save. Debt payment account numbers. This is one of those screens you're going to want to keep in mind. You may want to print and stick this somewhere so you keep it, so you don't lose it. So account 47110 is for principal on bond payments. Use object code 601. It has a corresponding interest code with an object code. If you've been in some of my other classes, you know, or Petra's or Lori's, don't mean just me. If you've been in our classes and you have seen that we have very specific account numbers for certain items, this is why, all right? Once you go over object code 500, those object codes are very specific for very individualized purposes. Debt payment is one of them. If, let's say you have 2 bonds or 2 long-term debts or multiple short-term debts, and you want to add some more account numbers, you want to be very careful doing it. You have to make sure that, let's say you decide to add another long-term debt that's 47125, and you're going to name it debt on a grader or whatever it is. You have got to keep it in the right account number area. When you're working with debt, you want your year-end schedules to show up right, so it's important that you use the right account numbers. Now, the fiscal agent fees, I did put this down here if you've got some sort of a debt that has some sort of fees associated with every payment. it's okay to add account numbers on the appropriate spaces. Now, I did go into CTAS and show you some stuff. We're going to go back into CTAS in just a minute. And I want to go through the screen first, though. When you add a new debt, make sure you've got the origination paperwork and your amortization schedule. It's really tough when you call us and ask us to help and you don't have an amortization schedule, because we can't make guesses about things like debt. We need to have you have the original information. You add it into the area where it's blue. You're going to choose what kind of a debt. In this case, I picked a revenue bond. With the different types of debt, like I said, the state thinks short-term is 1 year or less. Then they gave you long-term for anything over a year that's not a bond or an assessment, okay? If you're doing a bond, we also add different fund numbers. But with bonds, there are so many variables. We'd really like to talk to you individually on those, or you can look through the manual online if you need help with the accounting, because bonding is different than regular debt. The CTAS module accounts work great, but we're going to go through it real quick in like a minute, so you're just going to get an intro here. Until you hit save, the remaining balance doesn't update, so that's one thing I do know I mentioned earlier. You have to enter the payments to have this remaining balance decrease. Now, when a new debt's issued, make sure you add a receipt in the accounting module to show the debt proceeds. So when you're going to receipt the funds, so let's say you did a new fund and you used Fund 305 because this is a bond, and keep in mind with bonds, you have to levy 105% every year of whatever your payment's going to be. You're going to put the gross amount in. And if you don't receive the gross amount, which happens a lot, that's not unusual, you're going to add the issuing fees. And you're going to add the issuing fees when you're in the claims module, because you had to pay these. Sometimes you have to write a check. Sometimes they are deducted straight from the bond issue amount. Is there a right or wrong? No. Normally, when you're dealing with bonds, you've got an attorney or bond counsel helping you through this, and that's going to determine how you want to do the receipts. You put the receipt in, though, for the whole amount in CTAS because you want to show that there was a cost associated with this bond. That's why you want the issuing fees to go through the claims process, okay? I hope that makes sense, but it's important to show that this money did cost money to get. Now, if an attorney tells you differently, you can do it differently. But otherwise, the best practice is to show that you got, in this case, I think I used $1 million. Yeah, $1 million. And the costs associated with issuing and receiving that $1 million, there were some agents and issue costs was $23,456. Show them separately. The best method, it depends on the situation. Indebtedness reporting, you've got two main reports. Indebtedness activity, and you can choose the date ranges on this one. The other one is Schedule 6, where you just choose the year of reporting, all right? Those are pretty much your two main debt reports. So when you're doing the debts, don't enter interest in the indebtedness module. Use the right account numbers. Make sure you add the funds to the receipt, or add the receipt to the funds, and don't lose your amortization schedule. If you can remember those four things, no matter what type of debt it is, you're going to account for it correctly. Okay, any questions? I know we've used up a whole lot of time here. Oh, there's stuff in chat, but that's the links, all right? Those are all your links for everything. I think I have answered the questions. If not, please type one again. Keep in mind, class suggestions are always welcome. Email them whenever you've got a question. Since I've got 1 or 2 minutes here, if there's not a question, I do want to show you a couple things back in CTAS with investments, mainly because they have to do with other questions we routinely get. So when we go into the investment module, we get more questions on investments than anything, okay? So when I'm going through the investment module, and we're going to add a 100 interest, and let's just call it 12/01/2020, just so we can find it easily. And let's say we took money out of our general fund, our interest. I did say interest, didn't I? Let's say we got $35 in interest. We didn't get anything on the road and bridge for some reason. Now this particular savings account is already at zero because we've taken money and we've done different samples. You notice it hasn't changed yet, and I'm just adding $35. As soon as I hit my tab, there we go, the $35 is added. So I was serious. That tab button is pretty important some days. Hit your save button. Okay, come on, save. Save. Oh, see the red dots? I'll click in another box, and then I'll hit save. And then it works great. Even as trainers, we will screw up and do the same things. That's one of the reasons we tend to know where the mistakes come, is we've made them ourselves a lot of times. So we go back to our investment list. One of the questions we get on investments, can we delete these? Well, I didn't try this ahead of time, so let's find out. Here's a value of 0 on an investment. The associated receipt or divest, so we can't delete this one yet, okay? Evidently, that's one that I was playing with, and it's got a transaction this year. When you're trying to delete these things, they do not always delete. Just realize that it can have 0 balances, and it's okay. When you're searching for an investment, sometimes this screen will get really full, especially if you're a township who's constantly getting new CDs, and all of a sudden you've got a screen full. If you don't keep these purchase dates in order, you're going to have trouble finding the right investment. So like if I put these purchase dates in ascending order by clicking on purchase date, we can see the 2012s up top. Well, I don't care about that one. That's a 0 balance. It's already been taken care of. I'll click on the purchase date again to get the latest ones up top. But then if I look at the current value, I've got zeros and some with value mixed in. You can hit the current value, the zeros go to the top, hit it again, and the ones that have value are up at top. I can see that I've closed these out. They don't hurt anything being there. I know some people don't like to see them if they're all done, but you do want to just let it go because it's okay that they're there. All right? Okay, I see I've got one more question. You mentioned not to change the IAD or IAW. What's the reason? The reason is when you change an IAD or IAW, it unassociates it with its current investment. That's a quirk in CTAS. So if you change an IAW, let's say 86, to a real number in your accounting, all of a sudden CTAS doesn't know that that piece went with the investment, and your investment module isn't going to work correctly, and you're going to get zeros where you don't want zeros, and your investment balances are going to start getting screwed up. All you've got to do is fix those, and it works again, but it's a process usually. All right, well, we are at 9:59, if I have that right, Deborah. I believe that's going to wrap up everything. I see one question. If I can answer quick, I will. Oh, thank you. You are welcome. Like I said, if you have any questions, contact one of us trainers.
Thank you so much, Lucinda. This concludes our session. I would like to thank our speaker for her participation and thank all of our registrants who attended today's program. Certificates of attendance and evaluation forms will be emailed to live attendees within 24 hours. We ask that you please take a few moments to provide us with your evaluation of today's program. I invite you to visit your association website for a list of more upcoming programs and hope that you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.